Hello, good people of YouTube. I am going to let you watch a little video of me driving around while I speak. This has nothing to do with my video here, um, but just something to watch while I talk. So, if it runs, I don't know why it's freezing up. So, when I was a kid, my parents they raised me as sort of a latchkey kid. Not all the time, but some of the times. Times were different back then. I know you've heard this before, and you think, BS. Even some people my age said it wasn't different. But we always lived in really small towns, really small areas, and so, yeah, things were different. Um, Back then, you could leave your doors unlocked in your house, and you didn't have to worry about it. Now, I lock my doors even when I'm at home because it's so dangerous. Um, Even here in this country, it's safer than it is in the U.S. And these people, they're not quite so friendly to Americans. But, I mean, it's not horrible, but, uh, this is one of these things where you just watch what you say and you do when you're out there in town. But this whole purpose of this video is I wanted to tell you what happened to me when I was a kid. Mr. Ballin prompted this one from me. Mr. Allen. Yeah, Mr. Allen. But Mr. Ballin, as he goes by his studio name, he prompted me on this one. And he told a story that was, oh Lord, that poor guy got a chunk taken out of him by a shark, or at least a bite. And the same thing by a lion a little bit later on. And I will leave links to that video uh, down below. But it reminded me of something that happened to me when I was about 9 or 10 years old. Now, being a latchkey kid, every now and again my mom would go on a shopping trip and I'd be bored, and so I'd head out the door and I'd go out in the woods. And I went deep in the woods. My parents did not know how deep in the woods I went. I would go way deep in those woods. Well, I knew the woods pretty well. And one day my dad came in and told me that he had lost the house, he lost his job, we were moving, and I was brokenhearted. But we wound up moving. My dad, he sold cemetery property, and we wound up moving into a cemetery that was part of his uh, package for his employment. And it wouldn't be the last time that this happened to us, but we wound up living right in Douglasville, Georgia. This time, it was in Douglasville, Georgia, off of Bankhead Highway, and the cemetery had a lake and a pond. Well, we called it a lake and a pond. It was really a small pond and a big pond. And the big pond, the lake, a lot of people would stop and go fishing there. My dad always told me, stay out of that water. Do not go in the water. Now, he'd only let me go in the water if the girl next door, who I actually had a big crush on, if she was out there swimming, I could go out there. I guess he thought had more sense than I did. And she probably did, and probably still does. But that's the only time I could go into that lake. Well, I'd lived there for a couple of years, and one day my dad sent me up to go trim the bushes up near where the cemetery burials started. We lived well away from the cemetery burials. There was a lake between us and where the cemetery actually started. I mean, the whole area was cemetery, but they had not developed that part yet. And so I was out there trimming bushes, and it was a hot day. I was tired, I was sweating, and I didn't realize it, but I was being lulled asleep by this buzzing. Now, I'm allergic to bees, wasps, stuff like that. And I'm getting into this one bush area. There's this one really thick limb. I wanted to cut it out. And I'm really getting up in there. And as I finally got the clippers to cut, wham! Drops down by my feet all these ashes. And my heart stopped because I realized that wasn't ashes. That was what was left of a hornet's nest. And I had just cut a hornet's nest in half. And so as I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rewind this. As I started thinking about this, I'm like, I'm about to get stung by a whole hive of hornets. And I'm going to die right here. No one around to help me. And these bushes, they ran across the area, kind of like this road that we're coming up on here. And those bushes on the right-hand side there, only they went way back, like back to about where that other building is. So I'm trimming these bushes, and I had to run down those bush lines to get to the road and start running down the road or down the road toward the lake. And I'm running as hard as I can, as fast as my little feet would take me. And I knew that the only way that I was not going to get stung, if I didn't get stung before I got there, was to hit the water. So I hit that water, and I dove in, and I swam about halfway across, fully dressed. I held my breath and swam underwater as long as I could. And when I surfaced, I was about halfway across. I looked back on the shore, and it was just, the blue sky was just black with wasps. And I'm like, oh, I barely escaped that death. Now, I had no body fat on me, so I had to flail around to stay afloat. So as I turned around, I see that I've drawn the attention of a cottonmouth. Now, a cottonmouth is a waterborne form of, they're all waterborne. It's a form of southern water moccasin, and a very poisonous snake. And it's coming right at me. I know it's a cottonmouth because it's got its mouth open. I can see that white cotton in its mouth, which gives its name. It's cottonmouth. I'm like, this is not good. I'm in its domain. I think I'd do better against the wasps. So I took a big, deep breath, and I just got as still as I could, and I sank to the bottom of the lake, and I put my knees down to where my butt was touching my heels. And I stayed in that position as long as I humanly could. I thought my heart was going to explode. And I pushed up with all my might. I come up out of that water. I said, I'm going to get bit right here, right now. I come up out of that water, and I started looking around. I did not see that snake anywhere. I thought, man, am I ever lucky. I got to be the luckiest boy on the face of the earth. So I finished the swim across the lake, which I'd never done before. I'd never gone the whole length of the lake. And I got out, and I had my clothes on, so heavier than what I'm used to being. And I'm tired, and my heart is just pounding. I go up to the house, and my dad, who was supposed to be at work for some reason, was at home as I walked in, and he saw me. My dad was quite the disciplinarian, and he says, I thought I told you to stay out of that lake. At this point, I really didn't care. I looked at him, I said, Dad, with all due respect, shut up. I turned around, I walked over to the bathroom and I got undressed and started showering and getting cleaned up. And I was expecting him to come beat my butt. He never did. So at dinner time, we're sitting there, it's quiet for the longest time. So finally I told my dad what happened, tell the story of what happened. And my dad looks at me and says, I figured you had a good excuse. That's why I let you get away with it this time. But yeah, by all rights, I should have been killed twice right there. And, you know, unlike the John in the story of Mr. Ballin, which I'm going to, again, put a link down there. Mr. John, that man's lucky to be alive. He had life-threatening injuries. And I did not. So he's very lucky to be alive. However, by the same token, all it would have taken was one bee sting or that one snake bite, and I'd been dead. At my age and being in that water, I would have panicked, and I would have sent that snake's venom straight to my heart, because my heart was already pumping, and it would have been pumping a lot faster in the panic state, and I would have probably drowned. But so a little scary thing happened to me there. And again, no one saw it. I was all alone, and I would have been dead if either one of those things had gotten a hold of me. So if I'd have been stung on land, they would have found my body eventually. But if I'd have been bitten in that water, my parents would have never known what happened to me unless, well, I guess eventually I would have floated to the top. And then they probably still wouldn't have known what happened to me. They would have just assumed I was playing in the water. But that's it. I know I'm not as good of a storyteller as Mr. Ballin is, and for that I apologize. But I thought it was a pretty good story and one that I like to tell. And I don't want to take anything away from John, because I'm glad that did not happen to me. I don't think I would have survived it. John had a lot of what do you want to say? He had a lot of heart to make it through that, and I'm glad that he survived it. And I just, wow, that story was just amazing. But it did bring that memory back, and I wanted to share that with you guys. And I've got some more stories I'm going to post. One of them was brought to my memory by the channel Binge Finger 01. And when I make that video, I will put a link. I've got permission from them to use a small portion of their video, which I will use. And I'm going to put a link to that in that video. But it's an uplifting story of how I helped a young man. And I've got other stories I could tell, but this particular one, this video clip is what reminded me of it, and it's a really cool video clip. I hope to have all of you see that one as well. It's probably going to be a little bit before I do that one. This one was easier for me to do, so I am going to go ahead and close this off. This is me heading toward Malatia there, or toward the airport. And so I'm going to go ahead and close it off. You guys have a wonderful day. If I can figure out how to close it off.